Okay? So this session is really one that I developed for the older young people who are, middle school, and somebody says they have a girlfriend or a boyfriend, and they talk about dating and all those things. This is that session, the one that's the embarrassing one, right? So Orthodox dating in place of family arranged marriage. Why do I say that? Because in Ethiopia, they used to basically choose, your parents would choose who you get to marry, right? It could be, in the old days, as young as 15, 16 years old. And when you grow up in America, nobody chooses for you. The problem is you choose yourself. Well, part of this whole issue with LGBTQ is people choosing the wrong things. So we learned about the two natures of man and woman. We said the animate nature and the spiritual or the rational nature. And we talked about the illegal relationships, right? Moses said it's illegal for you to marry your cousin, your sister, your brothers, and so forth. It's illegal for you to marry a woman, that's if you're a woman, and a man if you're a man. Moses teaches us all of those things. So how should Orthodox youth deal with dating? So first of all, you're not supposed to date until you're a certain age. And from the perspective of dating in the Orthodox faith, dating doesn't mean that you can get together, have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and be just like a husband and a wife, except you're not married. That's not dating. Dating basically just means to get to know somebody else and to know what they value and what's important. I think for a father, I have told you guys, I have a 23-year-old, 21-year-old, 13-year-old. One of the things that we realize is that in America, we have to talk about this issue. If nobody talks about it, then you do it and you hide it. And then that's when it becomes wrong. So the first thing that you have to have as a rule is, if you get to the age where you're 17, 18, and you're interested in a boy or a girl, you have to have a nisahah about it. Number one, you have to have a confession father. You cannot just go around saying, oh, I like to do this or that on your own. And so when we talk about this, there are two reasons for dating in the modern world. In the old times, the Fatah Nagas, the law of the church, basically says that people were supposed to have a courtship. Courting means when you get to know each other. And you get to know each other trying to win the affections, they say, of the woman, that the woman might like you. And then the other reason why people would date is to find out if the person is compatible. Compatibility basically means, is it a good match? Now, the reason why I talked about this in terms of orthodoxy and dating is because it is not a good match if you bring somebody home who is Muslim. That's not a good match. Orthodox Christians have to marry people who have the same religion. You might think it's funny that I say it out loud, but you might think it's not a big deal. But there are lots of young people today who just seem to think that it's totally okay to marry outside of their religion. And so the first thing you have to realize is that you have to use your relationships with people of the opposite gender to find out if you're compatible. If the person is not Orthodox, then they have to be willing to become Orthodox. So there are different types of dating. There's monogamous dating, which is basically, in the regular world, people who are only dating one person. And then there's people who are dating like 10 or 15 people, as many as they want. Which one do you think is better for an Orthodox Christian?
Monogamous.
The person dating one person, right? Now, in the old times, what would happen is, when your parents arranged a marriage, they would do an engagement ceremony. And you couldn't marry anybody else after that. And so monogamy is the idea of there being a single relationship. So multiple dating involves seeing multiple people at the same time that may or may not be pure And so keeping this idea of dating, one of the important things is virginity. Oh, his eyes were like, what? He said that word. Yes, St. Mary's a virgin, right? Right. So virginity is important. When we talk about orthodoxy and we talk about dating, because nobody's arranging your marriages, throughout the process of dating somebody, virginity is a must. Until you get married, you are supposed to remain virgin. And so one of the problems we have is that we have lost our PowerPoint. That is one of the problems we have. Okay. So one of the problems we have is that in both situations, monogamous dating is dating that is only between two people and may or may not maintain bodily virginity. In our Orthodox perspective, all dating has to maintain virginity. Your purity is something you have. When you change and you don't have your virginity, you give up your purity. You cannot get purity back after you give it away. It's gone. Purity is a state that you're born with. If you give it away, after it's gone, it's not coming back. So, the purpose of dating is to find a suitable person for marriage, or some other type of secular relationship that satisfies one's need for companionship or carnal desire. In our Orthodox perspective, one of the reasons why you might be talking to a girl or might be talking to a boy is because you need to find out, one, if they are believers. If they're not believers, do you marry them? No. So this is one of the main things that you're working on. You're not just talking about, oh, my favorite thing is that movie or that TV show, right? You might have that in common, but TV shows change over time. And your feelings about TV shows will change. But what should you have? You should have values that are important to you. And one of the values that I want to instill in you today, that is, you're supposed to keep your virginity, your purity, just like St. Mary, and you are supposed to, when you do get married, marry somebody who is Orthodox. Does everybody understand that? All of you guys. That is our faith. That is our church's teaching. So, according to the church fathers, written in the law of the church, the purpose of marriage is two. Procreation, the act of producing children who will survive you, and satisfaction of concupiscence, the act of satisfying the desire that is in us to have children. Everybody has to understand that there is placed in us a desire to have children. When you see a baby, especially girls, even boys, I have to say, we're really natural people. That's a good thing. When you see babies, they are cute, right? Like you want to play with them. And like even, I'm sure some of you, like when you have little brothers and sisters, like, Mom, that's like my kid. You love them. God put that in us. It's natural. God wants us to love our own kind. And so, because of that, as you get older, that desire to love children and how cute they are makes people want to have their own children. And so that is the attraction between men and women in its purest state. The purpose of marriage then is to be willing to have children together. That's why we marry in our church. If you don't want to have children, then you should not be running to get married. You should learn how to live a single life and be a monastic. That's what you should learn. There's two ways in our church. Married life or being a monastic. That's two ways. That's it. You can only get a blessing in our church in those two situations. You realize that, right? The single person who is not, a monastic doesn't come into the church and get blessed by the bishop or the priest. There's no blessing for that person. So you can get blessed in the marriage ceremony, or if you become a monastic, you get a blessing. These are the two ways to get blessed. So, when we talk about striving or satisfying, the church teaches that one way to overcome the intense desire of our animal nature to have children is to strive to overcome it. This is what monokses do. They go out of the society, they go out of the world, they live in a monastery, and they fight themselves. They fight every feeling, every thought, everything that comes across their mind that is of their body. They fight it until they win. That can take years sometimes. This is striving. The other side is satisfied. The church also teaches us that a second, equally acceptable way to overcome the desire to have children is to marry in order to satisfy the desire of the animal nature and through time overcome it. Do you guys know that in our church, husbands and wives have to fast together? So even when you get married, you still fast. You deny yourself and your flesh. 7 times out of the year, when we're fasting, husband and wife are not supposed to be together. They're not giving into their flesh. This is so that over time you become stronger. The role of a husband and a wife is to help each other to get into heaven. You understand that, right? The job of a husband is to make sure that his wife is able to get into heaven. The job of a wife is to make sure that her husband can get into heaven. Can you get into heaven if you keep breaking God's rule of fasting? No. So, what does the husband and the wife do? They encourage each other to fast, doing and following God's way. So, you see how mixed up the rest of the world is, right? When they think about girlfriend and boyfriend, do they think about getting into heaven? Absolutely not. They think about what makes them happy, right? Why do we have to marry somebody who's Orthodox? Because that person will help you to get into heaven. Why do you have to maintain your virginity? Because first things first, you have to be able to control yourself. If you can't control yourself alone, how can you control yourself with somebody else? Right? It's simple. It's very simple. I know you might not be like, oh, this is an uncomfortable conversation. I'm having this conversation with you guys because I care about you. Because I know this world and what's in front of you. The problem is, when we don't have these conversations, bad things happen. And parents, bad things happen in our church all the time. Don't think that it doesn't happen. So protect your children. Talk to them. Have conversations. So I made up this concept of Orthodox dating. We don't really have an Orthodox dating. But Orthodox dating is dating that's built upon purity, virginity. It's okay for boys to like girls. It's okay for girls to like boys. It's not okay for girls and boys to do things that break their purity together before they get married. It's not okay. It's okay to be natural. Do you understand what I'm saying? What's happening is, in your schools and your classmates, you have people who, when they have the desire to have children, they use it unnaturally. It becomes unnatural in them. So I'm not going to tell you that liking a girl is wrong. I'm not going to tell you that liking a boy is wrong. God made it that way. When can you do it? What are the rules around it? That's what Christians follow. Adam and Eve were given a rule, right? Don't eat from that tree. They were given a rule, right? That rule is what you have to learn how to follow. So, Orthodox dating, in my mind, is maintaining monogamy, one-on-one relationship, and purity. And then improve upon it by discovering if the person that you're interested in is willing to have children. Because that's the primary purpose of marriage. Boys, do not try and date a girl because you simply think she's pretty. That is incorrect thinking. It is not spiritual. You do know that, right? There's a saying, beauty is only skin deep. Why do you think the women in our church cover their heads so that you can't see their beauty? Yes?
So we don't get attracted to them in church.
I can't hear you.
So we don't get attracted to them in church.
Right, so you don't get attracted to them in church. So he was answering the question. Why do you think the women in the church cover their heads? so you don't get attracted to them in church. And it's okay, guys. In 1 Corinthians chapter 11, St. Paul teaches exactly this. He says, when you come to church, are you supposed to be distracted by beauty? No. And then he says, well, what is the beauty of a woman? Her hair. Because that's the difference between men and women. If you see a boy, his boy's hair curls up, right? Look at that. There you go. There's probably a lot of hair in there. If I went like this, I get a couple, right? Boy's hair curls up, right? Girl's hair, what does it do? It falls. It adorns her. It makes her look different. Nature, natural setup is for women's hair to be their beauty. And so the church fathers teach, that's not why we're here. We're here to pay attention to God. And so we need to use that time in our life to investigate whether or not that person is a good fit for us. They have to be people who are willing to have children. This is the church's teaching. And they have to have a commitment to work together to overcome the intense desire that comes from our animal nature. What that means is, when you actually get married, what's supposed to happen is, during the time that it is fasting, the husband and the wife are not supposed to be intimate together. Both of them are supposed to be fasting, and both of them are supposed to separate for the purpose of fasting. Do you guys know where that is written in the Bible? It's in 1 Corinthians chapter 7. St. Paul teaches in 1 Corinthians chapter 7 the following. He says, now concerning the things that you have written unto me, it is good for a man not to touch a woman. Nevertheless, to avoid fornication, let every man have his own wife. So, fornication is the sin of having sex before you're married. That is the sin. To avoid fornication, what do? Get married. What do?
Get married.
Right. This is what the church teaches. If you cannot control yourself, you have to get married. Because if you don't get married, you will get punished for the sin. Fornication is a sin against your own body. There are two types of sins. There's sins against other people, and there's sins against your own body. Which do you think is worse?
Against your own body.
Who would try and hurt themselves? Sinning against your own body is like going against your own soul. Do you understand? So the person who goes against his own body is committing a worse sin than he is against somebody else. It's easy to sin against your body, right? It's always with you. It's hard for you to sin against other people. They're not always with you. So St. Paul basically teaches that this is a type of sin. And he says, nevertheless, to avoid fornication, let every man have his own wife, and let every woman have her own husband. And let the husband render unto the wife due benevolence, and likewise also the wife unto the husband. The wife has no power over her body, but the husband. And likewise the husband has no power over his own body, but his wife. Defraud not one another, except it be with consent for a time, that you may give yourselves to fasting and prayer, and come together again, that Satan tempts you not for your inability to control yourselves. Husband and wives are supposed to live a life where they fast and they pray so that they become stronger. And then when they come back together, it is legal. It's not illegal. Marriage is the most legal thing you can do. The problem is, when can you do it? Can you get married at 12? No. You're not ready. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. Marriage, whose primary purpose is not procreation. The church law, Fethahanagas, teaches that there are 4 reasons that people marry that are illegal. One of them you can come back from and you can become good again with. The first one is the desire of beauty. People marry for beauty. The person who marries because the person is beautiful, that person is not marrying for the right reason. You should be married for the purpose of having beauty and being willing to have children. And so, the second one is the desire for money. Some people get married because the person has money, right? or the person is rich. Should you marry a girl just because your family is going to become rich? Do people do it? Oh yeah. And there's a lot of talk about that. That is against our church's teaching. The church fathers, if you get married, they will question you what your reason is. If you give them that reason, they will tell you they will not marry you. That is not a legal reason to get married. The third reason it says is desire for social status. People sometimes get married because the parents or the family has a good name, right? Like marrying to the president's daughter. You might not like her, but you marry her just because of that. Is that okay? No. Similarly, if the president had a son and you marry the president's son just because he's president, does that make it good? No. You have to marry for the right reasons. And then the third is desire just for carnal union. It means people getting married just because they want to sleep together. That's it. They don't want to have children, they just want to sleep together. The one that you can come back from is beauty. You might marry somebody, but you marry them because they're beautiful and you want to have children with them. Over time, you'll realize that age makes beauty go away, right? And then your purity of your love can grow together as a husband and a wife. This is what the church fathers teach in the Finote. And so those people over time will correct themselves, but the rest, they don't. All of the rest of them, they go down a slippery slope. That is a very dangerous situation for marriage. So spiritual marriage is important. All of these come from the intense desire called concupiscence. And they encourage the intensification of desire, not the elimination of it. One thing what happens when we talk about people who are practicing an LGBTQ lifestyle is they intensify their desire. They don't eliminate their desire. Over time, husband and wife are supposed to become like brother and sister. They don't need to even be intimate together. They're just like brother and sister over time. This is normal. I want you guys to understand this. They are not teaching you this. It is normal for husband and wife to become like brother and sister. This is what God intended. It's okay. But they are teaching you guys other things. 80-year-old, 90-year-old men trying to marry 20-year-old girls. It's all over. This is not right. Do you know that human beings are the only species that at the age of 50, the women stop producing eggs to have children? The only species on the earth. By nature, does God want us to always have children? No. He wants us to stop and look where? Look up to Him. Look towards God. Become spiritual. But because people go against God all the time, they live in their flesh. They just push at their flesh. They don't see the signs right in front of them. It's right in front of us. By nature. So that is why I was teaching you. This other way is unnatural. It's a way of trying to push yourself into something that is not natural. So, what is the meaning of LGBTQ? What does it mean? The L stands for lesbians. The G stands for gay. The B stands for bisexual. The T stands for transgender. And the Q stands for queer. Now, as a professor in a university, right now they have what is called queer philosophy, literally, in universities. Queer, starting out with the Q, is the one that is the newest. To me, to be queer means you're not quite sure what you want to do. Just kind of in the middle. Queer. There are other reasons why people use queer. But in terms of the idea, that's queer. Transgender is when some of you guys will see it when you get to school. I was teaching as a principal in the school. I had a kindergarten through 5th grade, right? In Connecticut. The parents walked into my office, they made an appointment, and they said to me, our son was just kicked out of the Catholic school. We want you to enroll him in your school. Why do you want to enroll him in your school? Oh, well, why did they kick him out? Oh, because he's a boy, but he's identifying as a girl, and they said they can't have that thing. I said, he's first grade. How does he even know any of this? Oh, he knows. No, it's impossible. I've worked with too many first graders. It's taught. A first grade doesn't decide one day. Somebody talks to him and says to him this thing. So transgender means it's when a little kid, basically, or an adult, decides, I don't want to be a boy anymore. I feel more like a girl inside. I want to change my hormones. Now, you guys have to understand this. Biologically, we have two hormones in our bodies, estrogen and testosterone. Men have estrogen in them. Yes, they do. Women have testosterone in them. Yes, they do. If they didn't have testosterone, they wouldn't have hair. Because the hair is a testosterone thing. That's why men have beards. And when you get to a certain age, your body starts to produce more testosterone, you grow hair. You understand? Girls have it too. They grow hair. But the balance of the chemicals in our bodies are different. And they bring about the expression properly. So what the person who's transgender does now is they go to the doctor gives the male female hormones. You understand? They give the female male hormones. What's going on in the courts in many parts of the country is there are men who have been born men competing in female sports. And there's court lawsuits against that saying these guys have anatomically, their bodies are physically stronger than the regular girl. Because you can't weaken that part. You can't weaken the bones. You understand? And that they're competing. So there are lawsuits, people are fighting this stuff. This is something that the church stays out of. That is politics. We don't care about the politics. What we care about is what God has made for us to be right or wrong. And so the other issue there is bisexual. It means that a person will like to be sexually active with a man, if he's a man, or he could be sexually active with a woman. They go both ways, bisexual. Gay means to simply be one or the other as a man. To be gay means to be a man who likes men. And lesbian means to be a woman who likes women. This is the definition of those. And so you'll see it in school. It's taught at least by high school. You're introduced to it. At least. So one of the things that happens here is the issue of identity formation. When you turn 11, your brain starts to change. If I were to say to you all, and I'll say to you, do it. Close your eyes. Imagine yourself up in the top of the room looking down on yourselves. Do it too. Girls, do it. Can you see yourself? What do you have on? What color is your shirt? Where are your hands? Is your hand on your mouth? Is it on your chin? Is it on your face? See yourself. Okay, now open your eyes. Were you able to see yourself? Were you able to see yourself? Who was not able to see yourself? Were you able to see yourself? It was hard? Were you able? You see, he said no. Perfect example. How old are you? He's 11. He's just at the cusp. So the brain goes through the process of being able to see itself. Imagine itself looking down on itself. That is the beginning of identity formation. Because it's called self-analysis. You can see yourself how you look from the outside. When that process starts, that's where our children get attacked. That's where you get confused. Somebody tries to tell you something about your identity. So here, what I have up there is what's called a hierarchy of needs. Some of your needs are needs of self-esteem, the need to belong and be part of a group, the need for safety, and the need for bodily things like food. When people start to form their identities, they start to go in different directions when they have unaddressed safety needs. So for example, sometimes what will happen is there's violence against somebody by someone of the same gender. Then they will say, oh, I don't feel safe with boys. I'm going to, with girls, I'm going to go to boys. Or I feel unsafe with girls, I'm going to stay with girls. Something like this. What we have to do is make sure that we're not dealing with that the wrong way. If you feel unsafe or something has made you feel uncomfortable, if you don't talk about it with an adult, then you might misunderstand it. It is important for you to be able to talk to your parents and talk about if you feel unsafe in any way. For example, if somebody says, oh, you're ugly. They say that in school all the time. If you start feeling ugly and you start thinking, oh, I'm ugly, and then a guy comes along and says to you, oh, you're handsome, then when those feelings are all mixed up, you might start to say, oh, well, he likes me. This is not the way it works. So if somebody is messing with your self-esteem, don't question yourself. Talk about, with your parents, the idea of what is beauty. Is beauty just the way you look on the outside? Aren't there people who have ugly behavior on the inside? Beauty is more than skin deep. Beauty has to do with the beautiful nature of how you behave. Was Christ just physically beautiful? No, spiritually beautiful. His love for humanity, his love and care for people. This is what was beautiful about him. This is true beauty in humanity. This is what we're striving for. So, if you have a sense of belonging or unaddressed self-esteem needs, meaning you don't feel good about yourself, be careful. This is where these kinds of things can start. So parents, you want to help your children form identity. Talk to them. You need to talk to them about who am I? Who are we? What do we represent? When I first started to talk to my children about this, I remember saying to them, they used to say, why can't we spend the night at anybody's house? I never told them that when you spend the night at people's house, there are also different types of parents who have different types of behaviors. We don't want our kids to sleep at other people's house because you don't know what they do. And so I had to tell my children, okay, that's just not the way we do things. That's just not the way we do things. We have our own identity, our own way of doing things. And they said, oh, so everybody doesn't spend a night? I said, well, some people spend a night at other people's house, but other people don't. Just tell your friends that's just not our culture. And you will be okay. So I started to shape for them and make them understand about culture. Sunday school members, Sunday school teachers, we have to talk to our kids in the Sunday school about, things with compassion. If they ask you a question about LGBTQ, don't get mad at them. If they talk and act silly, don't be mad at them. That's their nature. You understand? Instead, what we have to be is compassionate. We have to know that the most important thing is connecting with our kids. That is the most important thing. Let go of everything else. That's what good teachers do. Unfortunately, you might have teachers who are really good at connecting with your kids who are going to push these agendas. So, let me ask you the question. What's more important? Should it be our Sunday school teachers connecting with the kids, or should we let the people in the other places connect with our kids? We need to have the strongest connection with our children. And that means if they make us mad, we have to let go of the anger, right? We have to spend our time investing in making the connection. Other people are doing it for a different reason. And we are the ones who are upset when our children have different cultural beliefs. We get upset. We should not be getting upset. It is our responsibility. So Sunday school members, have compassion and caring. Avoid coming across like you're punishing and blaming them. A lot of people, talk to me about this, and, Kes says, oh, how do you connect with the kids? I feel like being angry. I control myself from anger. I make a specific effort to connect. Usually if I correct them, I joke at the end. Do you understand? Because they do it to each other all the time. They can say something that hurts their friend's feeling, and then they joke and they connect again. What we don't do that. We hurt, and then we keep hurting. We cut, and then we go for blood. That's not good. We have to learn new ways because we're dealing with different challenges. When you went to school, there was nobody in your school or in your classroom teaching about these issues. When you walked through the hallways, you never saw two boys walking through the hallway holding hands. When you went to school, there was nobody trying to give you a drug that might make your mind change to the point that you act differently. The kids are struggling with real big issues that none of us have ever struggled with. So, in our Sunday schools, our teachers, we have to have a different attitude. Parents must also do the same. Do not have a punishing spirit. I don't want to tell you, but I have talked to so many Habesha families across this country. The parents punish, and then they lose the children completely. Completely. The minute they turn 18, they just walk. We don't need any more of that. We need to keep our children. So, remember what St. Paul says in the book of Ephesus, Ephesians chapter 6, verse 1. Do not provoke your children to anger, but win them with love. Catch them with honey. You don't catch a bee with a swatter. You kill a bee with a swatter. You catch a bee with honey, right? So, we have to think about that. Helping our children to form identity first begins by talking with them. Talk about how we feel about things. What it means to you to be married. What it means to be a family. What it means to be the children of God. We have to talk to our children. We have knowledge within ourselves that we say we don't, but we do. So LGBTQ relationships and marriages are relationships that fail to educate us about how to overcome our flesh. That's basically what it is. People who are in these types of relationships live with their flesh as much as they want or as little as they want. Orthodox Christians, we control our flesh from the age of 7 until the day that we die. That is the work of an Orthodox Tewahedo Christian. Learn to control your flesh. And how long did I say it takes? Most people, you don't start getting complete control until you're about 50. So you have a lot of work to do and you have a long time to work. That's just reality. So dating that leads to marriage for the purpose of having children is the right kind of dating. There is a time and a place for children to date. It's usually after you have everything you need set up. According to the book of Sinafetret, God created the fish before he created Adam and Eve, right? Why did he do that? Because Adam would eat fish. He could eat the vegetables. He could eat the fruit. God set everything up that Adam and Eve needed to live before they needed it, right? This means that for us to be in God's image, we have to prepare everything for our lives before the time comes. So, do you get married before you have a job? No. Do you date before you finish college? No. Why? Because when you're younger, you should be preparing yourself all the things you need before you get to that point. If you have children and you don't have a job, can the children eat? No. If you have children and you don't have a job, can you buy a house? No. Our community is very traditional. A husband is supposed to be able to provide for his family, right? So what it means to be a good husband or a good wife is to have all of the things necessary in advance. So that means, first, you're going to college, you're getting your education, or you're learning your profession. After you do that, you need to then make sure your spiritual life is in order. Can you get married not being spiritual? Absolutely not. There are people who waste their time going to clubs and parties and things and never end up having a spiritual life. You have to get those things in order. So, marriage is the consent of a man and woman in front of true witnesses and accompanied by the prayer of the priest to be united, live in harmony, to provide the means by which they may help each other in providing the means for their own needs, and to procreate offspring who will survive them. This is why people marry. It is not for all the other things. Eventually, husband and wife become like brother and sister. But they're marrying so that they can overcome this desire inside of them. Once they overcome it, they should live a good spiritual life serving God. So the witnesses there, they say two things. Either they say that the couple was pure and virgin, or that the couple has acknowledged that they fell into sin and they did nisah. That's what the witnesses do. Orthodox dating can replace arranged marriages. That's what I argue for you guys. You don't have to have somebody arranging your marriage, but you do need to make sure that you're staying a virgin, that you're monogamous, and that your purpose for getting married is because you want to have a family. Not because you want to be rich, not because you want to be famous, not because you just seek after somebody's beauty, but that you do it for all these right reasons that the church has. So here are 7 rules. Rule number 1, Orthodox dating focuses on monogamy and personal purity. Rule number 2, Orthodox dating focuses on children and family. Rule number 3, Orthodox dating does not focus on fleshly desires. Rule number 4, Orthodox dating leads to overcoming the animal desire that we have through marriage. Rule number 5, Orthodox dating does not embrace LGBTQ lifestyles. That is not blessed by the church. Rule number 6, Orthodox dating has a serious purpose. And rule number 7, Orthodox dating helps us to learn about the other's faith in God before we get married. These should be the steps that we're taking. But all of this is done in purity. So, because of this, I said to you earlier, if you're dating, you have to have a nisaha abat. You need to have somebody who is your spiritual father. So when you get to the age of dating, when you get to that age and you're in your 20s or your late 20s or so, this is what you're supposed to do. So until then, what should you be doing? You should be educating yourself, preparing yourself for life, and doing what is right. We don't have time to deal with abortion as a topic today, but we'll try and deal with it tomorrow because of the change with the law. Everybody heard about it. I remember the first day I heard about it, I walked into work and everybody talked about it. You know, it was like almost as if there was no reason to do any work. So we'll talk about that tomorrow. So, how are you guys now? You all right? You have a sense of what you need to do? So, if you like a boy or a girl, what should you do? Should you talk to your parents? Should you talk to your friends? Should you just keep it to yourself? Which one? Talk to your parents. Parents, if your kids talk to you, what should you do? Should you get angry at them? Should you punish them? Or should you be patient and try and discuss it with them? Be patient and discuss it with them. In fact, you're already married, so you have no reason to be mad at them. You're the perfect example of what they should do. Now, if you see what I've done, I've given you exactly what you need to do. Talk about your relationship with your husband or your wife. Talk about what family means. We need to talk about this with our children because other people have an agenda not to talk about family. They want to teach our children differently than our culture expresses. Everybody has a right to their beliefs. We're not saying that, but we have to exercise our right to our belief. We're not exercising our right, and that is why we have a problem with our children. Because we're not exercising our power. We have the power to teach our children the way that we want to. So let us continue to teach our children according to the faith of our church and according to the faith of our forefathers. May God bless us all. May He give us a peaceful night. And when we come back together, may He join us together so that we can learn His holy word. Amen. እሺ አንድ መዝሙር Do you guys have a mesmo, you know? Huh? Who's do you know any English? Mesmo? Okay.
Do you have any like?
Yes, sure. 1 second.
What's your earnings, bro? 0? Earnings.
Let's see. I know. So you guys know Mariam Finote? Let's see. English is. What is it? I forget the word. It's the alphabet. So I have to remember all these things in English.
አምነን የጸለይነውን ጸሎታችን እግዚአብሔር ይቀበልልን። መዝሙራችን፣ ዝማሬያችን ሁሉ ምስጋናችን ይቀበልልን። ቀሲስ ሰይፈ ቃለ ሕይወት ያሰማልን፣ ቃለ ሕይወት ያሰማልን፣ መንግሥተ ሰማያትን ያወርስልን፣ የአገልግሎት ዘመናቸውን ይባርክልን። ልጆች ዛሬ ደስ ብሏችኋል? ደስ ብሏችኋል? በምን በመማራችን ሌላ ቀን ተምራችሁ አታውቁም? እንዴት ነው? በሚገባን ቋንቋ ስላስተማሩን ማለት ነው አይደል? በትክክል በምትረዱበት በሚገባችሁ መረጃ እየሰጡ መረጃ እያስያዙ በመረጃ ስላስተማሯችሁ ደስ ብሏችኋል። የተማራችሁትን በደንብ ይዛችኋል። ቃለ ሕይወት ያሰማልን። ለእናንተ ብቻ አይደለም፣ ለትላልቆቹ ለእናቶቻችን ቢሆን ጥሩ በቂ የሆነ ትምህርት ተሰጥቶናል። ይህን ትምህርት እንድንማር ያበቃ እግዚአብሔር ስሙ ለዘላለሙ የተመሰገነ ይሁን። እናንተ ታዲያ ሁሌ ጊዜ እንዲህ ጸጥ ብላችሁ የምትማሩ ተረጋግታችሁ የምትማሩ ልጆች መሆን አለባችሁ። ስነ ስርዓት ያላችሁ ዛሬ ጥሩ ስነ ስርዓት ኖሯችሁ ጸጥ ብላችሁ ቃሉን ሰማችሁ። ሁሉ ጊዜ ስለማይሰማችሁ ነው መሰል እንዲህ የምትሉት የነበረ ነው። ስለማይሰማችሁ ነው ወይስ በቤት እግዚአብሔር ቃል ያሰማልን። መማር ማለት ማወቅ ማለት ነው። ለማወቅ ወደ ኋላ የሚል የለም ማለት ነው። መማር ማለት ማወቅ ነው አንዱ። ሁለተኛው መማር ማለት ትርጉሙ ከእግዚአብሔር ምህረት ማግኘት ማለት ነው። መማር ሁለት ትርጉም አለው። አንደኛው ምህረት፣ ይቅርታ፣ ቸርነት የእግዚአብሔርን ማግኘት። ሁለተኛው መማር ማወቅ፣ መፈላሰፍ፣ ከእግዚአብሔር ጋር መገናኘት ይሄ ማለት ነው። እና መማር ቀላል ትርጉም ያለው አይደለም። መማር እድገት ነው። መማር የአእምሮ ስፋት ነው። መማር ከእግዚአብሔር ጋር መገናኘት ነው። ከሰዎችም ጋር ያለው ግንኙነት ደግሞ ትህትናና ፍቅርን የተሞላበት ያደርጋል። እና መማራችን ጥሩ ነው። እግዚአብሔር የተማርነው በልቡናችን ያወለልን ያሳድርልን። ሰላም ሌሊት ይስጠን እግዚአብሔር። እንግዲህ ነገ ደግሞ እንገናኛለን። ስንት ሰዓት ነው? 10 ሰዓት ላይ በደንብ ተዘጋጅታችሁ ስትማሩ ግን እንትን መያዝ ያስፈልጋል። ይሄ ማስታወሻ ነገር ለትምህርት ቤት ለተርቲብ ይሄድ አሁን የመጣችሁት ለጸሎት አይደለም፣ ለትምህርት ነው አይደለም። ማስታወሻ መያዝ አለባችሁ። ታዲያ መማር ደብተር ያስፈልጋል። በደብተር ላይ ይዛችሁ የተማራችሁትን ነገ የምታስታውሱበት እዚያ የምታስቀምጡበት ነገ ስትመጡ ይዛችሁ መጣት አለባችሁ። አዎ ዝም ብሎ አሁን ዛሬ በማስታወሻ ካላዝ ነው ሰማነው ሄድነ እዚህ ጋር አይናችን ሌላ ነገር ሲያይ እዚህ ጋር የነበረው ወጥቶ ይወድቃል፣ ተረስቶ ይቀራል ማለት ነው። በመጽሐፍ ያለ ግን በማስታወሻ ከተያዘ ያንን እያስታወስነ ለነገው እናስታውሰዋለን፣ እናውቅበታለን ማለት ነው። እግዚአብሔር ሰላም ሌሊት ይስጠን። አነሳስቶ ያስጀመረን አስተምሮ ያስፈጸመን እግዚአብሔር ክብር ምስጋና ይግባው። ይህንን ጉባኤ ለማዘጋጀት የወጡ የወረዱ ልጆቻችንን እግዚአብሔር ክብር ያድልልን። በምድር በረከትን ጸጋን ሞገስን ያሳድርባቸው። በኋለኛውም ዘመን የቤተክርስቲያን አምላክ ደግሞ ሀብተ መንግስተ ሰማያትን ያድልልን። እናንተን ለማስተማር እናንተን ለማሳወቅ ብዙ ተደክሟል። አሁን ይችን ለማድረግ ብዙ ተደክሟል። ብዙ ታውረር ነበረ። ያንን አድርጎ ነው ይሄ የሆነና እሳቸውም ጥሩ መተውልናል፣ አባታችን ያስተምሩናል። እኛም ደግሞ በሰዓቱ ተገኝተን መማር መገንዘብ ማወቅ አለብን። ያ ከሆነ ድካሙ ፍሬ ላይ ስለዋለ አይሰማም። ይህ ባልሆነበት ጊዜ ግን ድካሙ ፍሬ ላይ ካልዋለ ከንቱ ድካም ይሆንብናል ማለት ነው። እና ድካማችን ፍሬ ላይ እንዲውል ነገ ተዘጋጅተን በጠዋት መምጣት አለብን። ጠዋት ረፍዷል ነበሩ 10 ሰዓት ነው የተባለ ይረፍዳል። ይሁን 10 ሰዓት ላይ እንገናኝና እንማራለን። እግዚአብሔር አምላካችን ሰላም ያሳድረን። አባታችን ሆይ ብለን እንጸልይ። አባታችን ሆይ በሰማያት የምትኖር ስምህ ይቀደስ፣ መንግሥትህ ትምጣ፣ ፈቃድህ በሰማይ እንደሆነች እንዲሁም በምድር ትሁን። የዕለት እንጀራችንን ስጠን ዛሬ፣ በደላችንን ይቅር በለን እኛም የበደሉንን ይቅር እንደምንል። አቤቱ ወደ ፈተና አታግባን፣ ከክፉ ሁሉ አድነን እንጂ መንግሥት ያንተና ኃይል፣ ክብር፣ ምስጋና ለዘላለሙ አሜን። አቤታችን ክርስቶስ ማረን ሆይ በመልአኩ ሰላም እንልሻለን። ሀሳብሽን ድንግል ነሽ፣ ደስታሽን ድንግል ነሽ። የአሸናፊ እግዚአብሔር እናት ሆይ ሰላምታ ላንቺ ይገባሻል። ከሴቶች ሁሉ ተለይተሽ አንቺ የተባረክሽ ነሽ፣ የማኅፀንሽ ፍሬ የተባረከ ነው። ጸጋን የተሞላሽ ቅድስት ሆይ ደስ ይበልሽ፣ ልዑል እግዚአብሔር ከአንቺ ጋር ነውና ከተወደደው ልጅሽ ከጌታችን ከመድኃኒታችን ከኢየሱስ ክርስቶስ ዘንድ ይቅርታና ምሕረትን ለምኝልን ኃጢአታችንን ያስተሰርይልን ዘንድ ለዘላለሙ አሜን። ኦ እግዚእ ኢየሱስ ክርስቶስ ሠራይ ኃጢአት ወካፌ ንስሐ ሠራይ ኃጢአት የኃጢአተ ኩሉ ሕዝብ እግዚአብሔር ይፍታ። ሰራ ምድሩ ትኬት ይሸጥላችኋል። የዕጣ ትኬት ያልገዛችሁ እየገዛችሁ ይበሱ በሩ ላይ ትኬት አንዳንድ ትኬት ያልገዛችሁ የገዛችሁ በቃ
I got AAA though, so.
ዕጣ